The spaceport was alive with noise. Ships from dozens of worlds arrived and departed, engines roaring and lights flashing in patterns only regular travelers could recognize. Talon walked slowly through the crowd, his worn boots tapping on the cold metal floor. He had been here for hours, hoping for work. Any work? A mechanic's hands could fix almost anything, but even small jobs were rare these days. He rubbed his fingers, still stiff from the cold outside, and glanced at the stalls lining the walkway. Steam rose from them, scented with spices, oils, and something sweet he couldn't quite identify. He was just thinking about a cheap meal when he noticed her. She stood near one of the drink stalls, her tall frame slightly hunched, her long robes hiding most of her body. Her skin shimmered faintly, a soft silver that caught the light in the spaceport, and her eyes were bright, too bright, like they had seen centuries instead of years. Talon froze for a moment, staring. He had never seen anyone like her before. Not in his travels, not in the stories. She was trying to pay for a hot drink. He noticed the small hesitation, the way her fingers hovered over the local currency. Talon knew that look. He had been in strange markets on distant moons, trying to understand customs that made no sense to him. He stepped forward without thinking. "Let me," he said simply, tossing a few credits onto the counter. The vendor raised an eyebrow but didn't protest. The alien woman's gaze turned to him. For a moment, she seemed unsure. Then she gave a faint nod and accepted the cup. "Thank you," she said, her voice soft, melodic, almost musical. Talon just shrugged and smiled. "No problem. Everyone needs a warm drink on days like this." She studied him for a moment, her eyes scanning him in a way that made him uncomfortable. He wasn't used to being looked at like that. Not by anyone. Most people either ignored him or looked down. But this felt different. He couldn't read her. Not at all. She took a careful sip of the hot liquid, and Talon watched her face. There was a flicker of surprise, maybe even admiration. She wasn't used to kindness, he realized. The small gesture had meant something far more than he could guess. He moved on down the walkway, but couldn't help stealing glances. She seemed out of place, in a place where people were usually calculating, trying to sell, cheat, or scam. She stood quietly, observing. Talon had learned to recognize those who belonged and those who didn't. She didn't belong. And somehow, that made him curious. He wandered closer to the docks, hoping to find a simple repair job. Ships were waiting, crews shouting, and the scent of fuel and ozone filled the air. As he passed a small cargo shuttle, he saw her again, now sitting on a bench a little ways off, cup in hand, staring into the crowd. There was a weariness about her that was strange for someone so obviously powerful. He wasn't sure why he thought she was powerful, only that her presence had weight. A voice called his name. One of the dock supervisors was waving him over. A quick job on a maintenance hatch, not enough to pay rent, but something. Talon nodded and hurried over, trying not to look back, but curiosity gnawed at him. Who was she? Why did she seem so different? The job was simple but messy. Talon worked quickly, wiping grease from his hands onto a rag that had seen better days. He heard whispers around the dock, rumors of a silver-skinned visitor seen on multiple colonies. He ignored them. Rumors were always wrong, usually exaggerations. Still, he couldn't shake the image of her eyes, the way they had held something he couldn't name. After finishing, he walked back toward the stalls. She was still there, but now someone approached her. A figure in dark robes, speaking in a language Talon didn't recognize. She shook her head, almost imperceptibly, and the figure turned away. Talon noticed the moment, small but significant. She was making choices of her own, rejecting authority. That caught his attention even more. Humans were used to small acts of defiance, but the way she did it, it was calculated, deliberate. Talon found himself walking closer. He didn't know why. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe the faint feeling that she was important in ways he couldn't understand yet. "Are you okay?" he asked, keeping his voice low. She looked at him sharply. Then slowly, she smiled. A small, almost human smile. "I am," she replied.
"I have had a difficult day."
He nodded. He knew difficult days. Everyone had them. "Want some company?" he asked. "Not like you need me, just if you like talking." For a moment she seemed confused. Then she nodded, a little stiffly. She moved to let him sit beside her. Talon noticed her robe shimmer faintly under the spaceport lights, a subtle beauty he hadn't seen before. But he tried not to stare. They talked in broken common language, neither fluent in the other's dialect. She asked about humans, their lives, their struggles. He told her simple stories of his own life, work, money, family he had left behind, and dreams that seemed out of reach. She listened intently, asking questions that were deep, meaningful, sometimes unsettling. Tylan couldn't explain why he felt comfortable. There was something about her presence that demanded honesty. She wasn't judging. She wasn't pretending. She was just listening. And that was rare. Hours passed, though it felt like minutes. Around them, the spaceport continued to buzz with life. Ships left and arrived, deals were made and broken, and Talon realized he hadn't even noticed the passing time. Then, a subtle vibration ran through the floor. Tylan glanced down at the small device he carried. It was his scanner, a tool he used to check the validity of jobs and local alerts. It picked up a signal from her, small, faint, but unmistakable. Something about her presence, her own personal energy, was being detected. Talon didn't understand it, but she looked at him and smiled faintly, as if aware. She stood, brushing off her robes. "I must leave," she said. Her voice had a weight now, almost regal, though still soft. Talon nodded, feeling a strange sense of loss. "Take care," he said simply. As she walked away, she paused and glanced back at him, her eyes holding a faint glimmer of something. Interest, maybe hope, maybe curiosity. Talon felt a shiver run down his spine. He didn't know why. He didn't know her, and yet something about her presence lingered in his mind. He watched as she disappeared into the crowd, and he realized that the moment had been bigger than a simple act of buying a drink. Somehow, the smallest act of kindness, a few credits, a hot drink, had started a chain of events he couldn't yet see. In a quieter corner of the spaceport, unseen, someone watched her. Advisors, servants, and advanced drones recorded every movement. They spoke in whispers, in languages Tylan could never understand. One of them looked at the data streaming in and said, "She has chosen him." Another responded sharply, "Impossible. A human? They cannot be trusted. Their kind is chaotic, emotional, unworthy." She, the alien woman, turned to the observers. "He is different," she said softly. "I see something in him that no other species possesses. I will watch him closely." Talon had no idea that he had entered a game far larger than he could imagine. A game of dynasties, survival, and interstellar power. All he had done was pay for a drink, and yet somewhere far above the crowded walkways and roaring engines, a plan was beginning. A plan that would change not only his life, but the fate of many civilizations. As the night deepened, Talon wandered to the edge of the spaceport. Looking up at the stars, he felt small, insignificant even, but for the first time in months, he felt hopeful. He didn't know why. He didn't know the woman's true identity, or the reason she had lingered. But something told him that his life had just shifted, irrevocably, towards something greater. And somewhere in the shadows, the alien woman observed him, quietly calculating, quietly planning. She did not yet reveal her secrets, but she would. She had to, for reasons even she did not fully understand. She needed him, and, perhaps, one day, humanity, to step into a role the galaxy had never anticipated. The engines roared louder as the last ship prepared for departure. Talon stayed still, watching the stars beyond the metal and neon. A single thought ran through his mind. Sometimes, a small act of kindness can change everything. But he did not yet know how big everything could become. The next morning, Talon woke to the same pale sunlight streaming through the cracked viewport of his small apartment. He yawned, stretched, and rubbed the sleep from his eyes. But the memory of yesterday lingered. The alien woman. Her silver skin, her sharp bright eyes, and the faint musical quality of her voice. He shook his head and tried to dismiss it. He had work to find, and the galaxy didn't care about curiosity or chance encounters. Still, as he walked down the crowded streets toward the docking bays, he felt a pull, a quiet tug in his mind he could not explain. He had thought their meeting was fleeting, a small kindness that mattered only for a moment, but something in the way she had looked at him suggested otherwise. At the docks, he found the usual chaos: cargo crews arguing over manifests, freighters letting out loud hisses as doors opened and closed, and the smell of fuel and hot metal filling the air. He paused at the edge of the loading area, scanning for any work. A small transport ship needed minor repairs, a loose coolant valve, a broken panel hinge. It wasn't much, but it would pay enough to get a hot meal. As he bent over the hatch, tightening bolts and replacing worn wires, he noticed her standing a few meters away. She had not approached him directly, yet somehow she had arrived at the same dock, watching. Talon froze for a moment. What was she doing here? He glanced around, thinking she might be following him by chance, but no. Her presence felt deliberate, measured. "Good morning," he called, trying to sound casual. She inclined her head slightly. "I trust you are well," she replied, her voice calm but precise. Talon chuckled. "What, as well as I can be. Work's scarce, and I can't complain if I want to eat." She studied him, and Talon noticed a subtle intensity in her gaze. She was observing, evaluating, not in a way that made him uncomfortable, but in a way that made him aware of himself. He realized she must have experience judging people, assessing their strength and character quickly. Humans did that too, but differently. He wondered what she saw in him that made her pause. Without answering, she stepped closer. "I have a proposition," she said. Her tone was soft but carried weight. Talon straightened, wiping grease from his hands. "Go on," he said cautiously. "I am in need of knowledge," she began. She spoke carefully, choosing her words as if they were precious. "Of humanity. Of what it means to survive, to adapt, to endure. I cannot rely on what my advisors say. They are correct in many ways, but they do not understand your species as I wish to understand it." Talon raised an eyebrow. "And you think I can teach you?" "I believe you can," she said simply. Her confidence was quiet, unshakable. "Not because of strength or wealth or position, because you possess qualities rare in my experience: honesty, compassion, curiosity. You act without expectation of reward." Talon blinked. No one had ever described him like that. He shrugged, unsure what to say. "I just do what I think is right. Most days that's all I can manage." She smiled faintly. "But that is exactly what I mean." Over the next few days, she made subtle efforts to involve him in her world. At first, small things. She asked questions about human diets, hygiene habits, and basic mechanics. Talon answered plainly, expecting nothing in return. Then she asked him to accompany her on small errands within the spaceport, checking the safety of cargo lifts, examining the efficiency of power grids, and noticing interactions among workers. Talon noticed the difference immediately. She didn't order or demand. She watched, listened, and occasionally suggested. It was unlike any authority he had met. Yet he found himself respecting her, even when he disagreed. And despite her wealth and apparent status, she moved through the crowd as though invisible, her presence commanding attention without arrogance. One afternoon she asked him about family. Talon hesitated, feeling the familiar ache of memories long buried. His family had lived on a distant colony, torn apart by conflict and scarcity. His parents had died years ago, leaving him alone. He said as little as possible, but she listened patiently, never interrupting, never judging. "You have endured much," she said quietly, "and yet you remain kind. That is extraordinary." Talon laughed bitterly. "Kind? I'm just trying to survive. Sometimes kindness is the only thing that doesn't let you fall apart." She nodded, her gaze distant. "I understand. My people, we do not experience the world this way. Survival is not tested by endurance or compassion. It is tested by logic, strategy, and power. Humans survive because you feel, you care. And that is remarkable." Her words struck him. He had never thought of human emotion as strength. To him, it was messy, unpredictable, sometimes painful, and yet, in her eyes, it was a weapon, a tool, a key to something greater. In the following week, Talon began noticing subtle changes in his life. Jobs appeared more frequently, supplies arrived on time, and people seemed more willing to help him. He suspected coincidence at first, but the pattern became undeniable. She had influence, and she was using it to create opportunities for him. One evening, while they sat together on a bench watching the stars beyond the spaceport, she asked him a question that stopped him cold. "If I asked you to leave your world and travel beyond the colonies, to places where humans are feared or unknown, would you go?" Talon frowned. "Why would I do that? I don't know you. I don't even know what you want from me." "I want to observe you," she said, her voice calm. "To understand how humans think, how you survive, how you endure. I cannot do this from afar. I must be near you. You have qualities rare in your species. You see things others miss. You act in ways others cannot predict. And you inspire loyalty even from strangers." Talon leaned back, staring at the stars. His life had been small, ordinary, and filled with struggle. He had never been remarkable, and yet here was someone, a stranger, an alien, a person whose presence seemed impossibly important, telling him he was unique. "I don't know," he said finally. "I've never left this colony. I don't even have the money to live comfortably here. Why me? Why not someone else?" Her gaze softened. "Because you are not like the others. I have seen the clever, the wealthy, the strong, but they are predictable. You are unpredictable." "You are human," he laughed quietly, shaking his head. "That's it?" "That's the reason? Because I'm human?" She smiled faintly.
"Exactly. And that is why I am watching you closely."
"I need to know if you are worthy of trust. If you are worthy of..."
"Partnership."
Talon blinked. "Blown." "Partnership, not in the sense you think," she said. "In the sense of shared purpose, shared goals, and shared challenges. My species faces extinction. I cannot rely on my kind alone. And, perhaps, the solution lies in humanity." He looked at her, not understanding, and she didn't explain further. Talon's life had become strange, unpredictable, and overwhelming. And yet, he felt something stir inside him, a spark of excitement he had not felt in years. He was part of something larger, something beyond himself, though he didn't yet know what it was. Over the next few days, she continued her subtle tests. She observed how he treated other workers, how he responded to danger, and how he behaved when no one was watching. Talon remained unaware of most of these tests, simply living his life and helping where he could. One afternoon, a group of alien merchants approached them. They recognized her, spoke in rapid commands, and expected compliance. Talon noticed the way she handled the situation. She did not raise her voice, did not assert dominance. She listened carefully, considered their words, and then made a decision that stunned everyone around them. She smiled faintly at Talon. Observe. Humans often underestimate subtlety, and sometimes restraint is more powerful than force. He watched in awe as she diffused the tension without aggression, using words and strategy instead of weapons or status. He realized then that she was not only powerful but brilliant, and that he had been learning from her as much as she had been learning from him. That night, as Talon returned to his small apartment, he felt the weight of the week settle on his shoulders. He had survived danger, learned new skills, and faced challenges that no ordinary mechanic ever would. And yet, he also felt a growing sense of purpose. He did not yet know what lay ahead, but he sensed that his life, and perhaps the future of many, was being shaped in ways he could not fully comprehend. In a quiet observation room far above the colony, the alien woman watched him again, her eyes glowing softly in the dim light. Her advisors whispered warnings, concerns, and doubts, but she ignored them.
"He is extraordinary,"
she said softly. Not because of strength or wealth or lineage, because he is human, and humans they defy expectation. Perhaps he is the key we have been searching for. The stars beyond the observation window seemed to shimmer, as if in agreement. Somewhere in the vastness of space, a future was beginning. One that no one, not even Talon, could yet imagine. And as Talon lay in his small bed staring at the ceiling, he felt it too. A quiet, unshakable sense that his life was no longer ordinary, that someone, somewhere, had chosen him for a reason he could not yet understand. The galaxy was changing, and human courage, kindness, and resilience would be at the center of it all. Talon woke to the sound of urgent humming from outside his apartment. The spaceport was alive earlier than usual, ships landing and departing with a precision that left him dizzy. He rubbed his eyes and dressed quickly, knowing that today would be like no other. The alien woman was waiting. He didn't know why, only that she had sent a small, precise message, instructing him to meet her at a quiet docking bay at sunrise. When he arrived, she was standing near a sleek black shuttle, her silver robes gleaming in the early light. The metallic shimmer caught the sun, and for a moment, Talon simply stared. There was an authority in her posture that made him feel both awed and uneasy. "Good morning," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "What's so important that I need to meet before work?" She smiled faintly, almost amused by his tone. "I wish to speak frankly today. No tests, no errands, no observations. I will explain who I am and why you are important." Talon froze. Important? He was a mechanic. A man who struggled to survive day by day. He had never been important in his life, not to anyone, not to a corporation, not even to himself. "I don't understand," he admitted. She gestured for him to sit on a nearby bench. "My name is Lyria. I am of the ruling class of my people. Wealth, power, influence. All of it is mine. I own fleets, corporations, and territories. I am the last hope of my species." Talon blinked. "You? You're rich? More than you can imagine," she said softly. "But wealth is meaningless if there is no future. My species is dying. Reproduction has failed for generations. Without intervention, my people will vanish within decades." He struggled to process this. His life had been small, limited by poverty and chance. Now he was staring at someone whose very existence could shape entire civilizations, and somehow she had chosen him. "I don't understand why me," he said finally. "I'm just a human. I fix machines. I survive. That's all." "That is precisely why," Lyria replied. "Humans survive because you do not calculate only with logic or status. You do not act solely for reward. You act from instinct, courage, and compassion. That is why I watched you. That is why I have involved you in my world. Your qualities are rare, even among humans." Talon laughed nervously. "So you're saying I'm special? Just because I do what feels right?" "Yes," she said. "And more. You are unpredictable in ways that my species cannot comprehend. You see what others miss. You act in ways no other candidate would. And for that?"
You are invaluable.
Talon shook his head. "I'm not sure I like being called a candidate. Sounds like you're recruiting me for something dangerous." She regarded him calmly. "It is dangerous. I am seeking a solution for the survival of my species. You have been chosen because I believe humans, your qualities, your genetics, your resilience, may hold the key to what we cannot achieve on our own." The words hit him like a wave. He felt small, helpless, overwhelmed, and yet a spark of pride flickered. Somehow his humanity, the very thing he had never valued, was being recognized as a strength. "I don't know if I can do that," he said honestly. "I mean, leave everything I know, my home, my friends, and be part of some alien plan?" She studied him quietly. "I will not coerce you. That is not my way. I require your consent. If you refuse, we find another path. But I warn you, humans rarely encounter opportunities such as this, and even fewer are given choice freely." Talon thought about it. He had lived his whole life in a system that offered no choice. Survival had always been dictated by circumstance, not by will. And now he was being offered freedom, purpose, and danger, all at once. He looked at Lyria, and for the first time, he realized that she was not just a ruler, not just a billionaire. She was desperate. Her species' survival depended on something he could offer, something he didn't yet understand. And that realization scared him more than any danger he had ever faced. Over the next hours, Lyria explained the plan. She intended to introduce human genetics into her species' gene pool. Not to replace it, but to revitalize it. The challenges were immense. Galactic laws, species rivalries, and political factions would resist anything that threatened tradition. And humans, well, humans were unpredictable. That was the greatest challenge of all. Talon listened carefully. He had questions, doubts, fears. He wanted no one to be forced into a solution, and he wanted assurance that no one would be hurt for his sake. Lyria answered with honesty, detailing the risks and consequences. He began to understand that this was bigger than wealth, bigger than survival, bigger than even life itself. "Why me?" he asked again, needing to hear it in plain words. "Because you are human," she replied. "Because you survive, you care, and you act with courage when others falter. Because you see value in things my species has long forgotten. Because you are not like the others." Talon swallowed hard. "So you're saying humans are better?" "No," Lyria said firmly. "Humans are different. That difference may be the difference between survival and extinction. That is why you matter. That is why I need you, not as a servant, not as a tool, but as an equal participant in what may be the most important choice of our era." Talon's mind raced. He had always dreamed of adventure, of purpose beyond surviving the next day. And now he was offered it. And yet he also felt the weight of responsibility pressing on him. Heavier than any mechanical job. Heavier than any battle he had ever faced. "What if I say no?" he asked, his voice quiet. "What happens then?" "Then I find another path," she said calmly.
I do not force consent. I respect choice.
"But I warn you, this opportunity may not return, and the galaxy does not wait for those who hesitate." He stared at her, trying to measure the magnitude of her words. He had always been practical. He had always chosen survival over risk. And yet, a strange part of him, the part that had always helped strangers, shared warmth, and acted from instinct, stirred now. Perhaps this was the moment he had been preparing for without knowing it. Days passed, and Lyria's presence became more than observation. She began including him in conversations with her advisors, translating complex interstellar politics into terms he could understand. She challenged him to think beyond human perspective, but also asked for human insight, valuing his judgment. Talon began to see that his species' traits, adaptability, ingenuity, empathy, were assets even in galactic strategy. One evening, while examining a small shuttle for travel readiness, Lyria posed a question that made Talon pause. If you were offered the chance to change the course of entire civilizations, knowing some risks are inevitable, would you take it? Talon thought of the dock workers, struggling to survive, of his own lost family, of friends who had perished in minor conflicts across the colonies. He thought of the galaxy beyond his world, vast and unexplored. And he thought of the alien woman who had shown him kindness without expectation. "I would," he said finally, surprising even himself. "But only if it's fair. Only if no one is forced. Only if it's real." Lyria's eyes glowed faintly with approval. "That is why you are human. That is why I chose you. Humans act not for power, but for principles. And principles are stronger than armies." The next challenge came sooner than he expected. Galactic factions, sensing an unusual presence in the colony, arrived with demands. They wanted to know who Lyria was, who she was meeting, and why she was consulting a human. Lyria handled the encounter with skill, her calm authority shocking even Talon. She did not fight. She did not bribe. She explained, reasoned, and subtly intimidated. By the time the factions left, they were unsettled, unsure if humans or aliens were in control. Talon watched, amazed. He realized that humans, even with limited power, had a natural ability to adapt and respond in ways other species found difficult to predict. He understood in that moment why Lyria had chosen him, not because he was strong, but because he was human. That night, back in his small apartment, Talon felt a strange mixture of pride and fear. His life had changed completely. He was no longer a mere mechanic. He was part of a plan that could reshape the galaxy, a plan that involved life, death, and the survival of an entire species. And for the first time, he felt truly alive. But he also felt the weight of choice. He had not yet agreed to Lyria's ultimate request. He had not yet decided whether to risk everything for a future he could not see. And he knew that tomorrow, or the day after, he would be forced to confront the most important decision of his life. Somewhere above the colony, in her observation chamber, Lyria watched him again. Her advisors whispered warnings. Humans were unpredictable, emotional, and chaotic, but she ignored them. "He understands," she whispered softly. "He may be the key. He may also refuse. But even refusal is informative. Humans are extraordinary in their unpredictability, and perhaps that is exactly what we need." The stars outside the spaceport shimmered faintly, as if the universe itself were aware of the choice looming ahead. Talon, unaware of the full scope of what was happening, looked out at them and felt a quiet certainty. Whatever path he chose, his humanity, the very thing he had always underestimated, would define it. And somewhere, in the shadows of political power and interstellar intrigue, the galaxy began to shift, ready to test human courage, compassion, and defiance on a scale never imagined. Tylan woke before sunrise. Today felt heavier than any day in his life. He dressed quickly, checking the small tools and devices he always carried, even though he did not know if they would matter. His mind raced with thoughts of Lyria, of her people, and of the responsibility she had placed on him. The moment of decision had arrived. When he reached the quiet docking bay, Lyria was already waiting. Her silver robes gleamed in the faint light, and her eyes held a mix of hope and gravity. Talon noticed a faint tension in her posture, something almost human in its anticipation. She did not speak at first, merely watching him approach. "I understand what this day is," he said quietly. "I've thought about it all night, and I think I know what I need to do." Lyria inclined her head. "Then speak, human. What is your choice?" Talon swallowed. "I will help, but not because I'm afraid, not because I want your approval, and not because I can't walk away. I will help because it is the right thing to do, and I will make sure no one is forced. No one will be hurt. I will only act with honesty and with consent." Lyria studied him closely. Her eyes glimmered with a mixture of relief and admiration. "That is all I could hope for," she said softly. "Humans, you act in ways I could never predict, and yet your integrity is absolute. With that," she gestured toward her shuttle, "then we begin. You will accompany me beyond the colonies. You will meet my people, my advisors, and others who may resist. Your humanity will be tested, and so will your courage. Are you ready?" Talon nodded. "I am."
Let's go. The shuttle rose into the pale morning sky, engines humming smoothly.
As they left the planet behind, Talon watched the blue and green world shrink beneath them. He felt a strange mixture of fear and exhilaration. This was no ordinary journey. This was a journey that could change the lives of millions, even billions, and the galaxy beyond. Over the next days, Lyria introduced him to her people. Her advisors, initially wary of a human, were surprised to find him speaking with clarity, reasoning with insight, and observing situations with a perspective no one else had considered. Talon noticed the subtle differences between humans and Lyria's species, their reliance on strict protocol, their comfort with manipulation and hierarchy, their difficulty understanding emotion. He also noticed the value of human qualities: honesty, courage, adaptability, and loyalty. One evening, as they convened with the council, Talon witnessed the first real challenge. Several senior advisors opposed involving humans at all. They spoke quickly, their voices clipped, their arguments precise. They feared chaos, unpredictability, and what they called emotional interference. They warned Lyria that choosing a human could destroy centuries of planning and diplomacy. Talon listened quietly. When the discussion ended, Lyria turned to him. "What do you think?" she asked. He took a deep breath.
"They are wrong. Humans are unpredictable, yes.
But unpredictability can be strength. Loyalty, courage, and empathy. Those are things no one can calculate. That is why I am here. Not to follow orders, but to act wisely when choices matter." The room fell silent. Even Lyria's advisors, trained for decades in strategy, seemed struck by his words. It was not a challenge of strength or intelligence. It was a challenge of principle. And humans, Talon realized, could face such challenges without fear of consequence, because their values were rooted in instinct and morality rather than rules or position. Over the following weeks, Talon became more involved in planning. He offered insight on negotiation, trust, and compromise, concepts that Lyria's species struggled to apply outside strict protocol. His input prevented several conflicts before they began, showing that humans, while seemingly limited, possessed a rare understanding of consequence and moral weight. Then came the ultimate test. A rival faction, sensing the unusual alliance, launched an ambush to seize Lyria and force her to abandon human involvement. Talon and Lyria's team were caught in a narrow canyon on a remote planet, surrounded on all sides by hostile ships. Most would have panicked. Most would have tried to negotiate, bribe, or flee. But Talon acted instinctively. He organized a plan using limited resources: broken transport pods, low-level energy weapons, and terrain knowledge. He communicated clearly, calmly, and decisively. "Follow my lead," he told the small group of guards. "We don't attack them head-on. We move through the canyon, use the cliffs, and force them to chase shadows. Everyone stays in pairs. Trust each other. Trust me." Lyria watched in awe as he executed the plan. Humans, she realized, did not rely on brute strength or authority. They relied on ingenuity, instinct, and trust. And in that trust, they could accomplish feats that even centuries of advanced planning could not guarantee. By the time the rival ships arrived at the canyon exit, they found the defenders gone, their ambush foiled. Talon's plan had worked perfectly, not because it was complex, but because it relied on human intuition and courage. After the battle, Lyria approached him. "You have done more than I could imagine," she said softly. "Your species, it is remarkable, not because of strength, not because of tools, but because of values. You protect what is right, and you adapt when necessary. That is why I needed you." Talon shrugged, feeling the weight of the compliment. "I just did what I thought was right. I didn't think about it as special. Special is relative," Lyria said. "But you have changed the way my people see humans. You have shown that we cannot ignore you, and that your species brings qualities the galaxy cannot afford to dismiss." In the following months, Talon worked closely with Lyria and her advisors to implement the plan for her species' survival. They studied genetics, cultural integration, and ethical methods for ensuring that her people could continue without losing their identity. Talon's humanity became a symbol of fairness, courage, and compassion in discussions where logic and power had previously dominated. And then came the moment Lyria had been waiting for. She approached him privately on the observation deck of her flagship, stars stretching infinitely beyond the viewport. "You understand the choice you must make," she said quietly. "Participation now means more than guidance or advice. It means your legacy will be intertwined with mine, with my species. You may have a child, a symbol of unity, hope, and survival. This is not a simple decision. You will not only shape my people, you will shape the future of the galaxy." Talon looked out at the stars, feeling the enormity of the decision. He could see the responsibility clearly, the potential consequences, and the dangers. But he also felt the spark of human courage that had carried him through every challenge of his life. "I will not act out of fear," he said finally. "I will not act because anyone demands it. I will only act because it is right, because it is fair, and because it honors both your people and mine." Lyria smiled faintly, her eyes glimmering. "Then you understand the weight of your humanity. You see why I chose you. And you see why I trust you more than any advisor, soldier, or diplomat in this galaxy." Talon nodded. He understood now. This was not about power, wealth, or prestige. This was about values, courage, integrity, compassion, and defiance in the face of expectation. These were traits no machine, no algorithm, no authority could replicate. These were human traits, and these traits were the key to shaping the future. Months passed. Talon and Lyria worked side by side, not as master and servant, not as ruler and subject, but as partners in purpose. The galaxy slowly adapted to the new reality. Humans were not just a young, reckless species. They were essential. They were unpredictable, yes, but in ways that drove progress, protected the vulnerable, and fostered hope. And then, finally, the new generation began. A child, born of union, not domination. A symbol of hope and connection, bridging worlds, species, and ideals. The galaxy watched with cautious interest, unsure of what this blending of human courage and alien wisdom would bring. Talon held the child for the first time, feeling the warmth and weight in his arms. He realized that all his life he had been preparing for this moment without knowing it. The small acts of kindness, the courage to survive, the willingness to act morally and decisively, all had led to this. Lyria stood beside him, her expression a mixture of relief, pride, and wonder. "You have done more than save my people," she said softly. "You have reminded me why life is worth protecting. You have reminded us all why humans endure." Talon smiled faintly, looking at the stars outside the viewport. "We just do what we must," he said simply. "It's what humans do." The galaxy had changed. Not through war, not through domination, but through courage, compassion, and choice. Humans had shown once again that their greatest weapon was their humanity, and that even in the vast indifferent universe, one human could shape the future in ways no one could predict. And somewhere among the stars, unseen yet powerful, the galaxy began to acknowledge a truth it could no longer ignore. Humans do not merely survive, they endure, inspire, and change the course of history. The stars shimmered like silver against black. A reminder that even in the cold expanse of space, courage, integrity, and humanity could shine brighter than any engine, any weapon, or any wealth. And Talon, who had once simply paid for a stranger's hot drink, understood at last that the smallest acts of kindness could ripple across galaxies, that the heart of humanity was not in conquest, nor in power, but in the choices that define who we are and what we leave behind. The galaxy had seen humans at their finest, and it had only just begun.